It is January 20th, 2026. And if you've been anywhere near the energy headlines lately, or, frankly, just scrolling through your feed, the vibe is unmistakable.
Oh, absolutely.
We're supposedly smack in the middle of the U.S. nuclear renaissance. You could feel the momentum. We've got new laws, massive promises coming out of the White House.
And these giant data centers practically begging for clean baseload power.
Exactly.
It definitely feels like a moment, doesn't it? The optimism is palpable. But, and I hate to be the one to rain on the parade so early in the deep dive.
Uh-oh.
There is a very large, very dark cloud sitting on the horizon that almost nobody in the industry wants to acknowledge.
Which is exactly what we need to unpack today. Because on paper, everything looks, well, invincible. We have the ambition, we have the legislation. But when we started peeling back the layers for this deep dive, we kept running into this central irony.
I know what you're going to say.
It's the one thing that keeps popping up. The United States is currently policy-rich, but hardware-poor.
That's the most concise way to put it. Policy-rich, hardware-poor. We have the legislative software. Laws are great. But we are missing the industrial hardware to actually execute the vision.
And the scary part is, we might be about to walk into a buzzsaw. There's a lot of chatter, and we're seeing this in multiple analyses, about the European Union preparing what analysts are calling a trade bazooka.
Right.
While Washington is hyper-focused on domestic tax credits, the real threat to this nuclear comeback might actually be a catastrophic breakdown in transatlantic trade.
And we tend to view nuclear power as this strictly national issue, right? We think about national security, domestic energy independence.
Of course.
But the reality is the modern nuclear industry is globalized, deeply globalized. If we get into a trade war with Europe, it's not going to look like a sudden explosion. It's going to look like a slow strangulation.
Slow strangulation. That is a vivid, albeit disturbing image to start our Tuesday with. But let's get into the mechanics of that. Our mission today is to explore exactly how a trade dispute with our allies in Europe could turn this American nuclear comeback into a house of cards.
Yeah.
We're talking about cutting off the vital organs of the industry, the heavy forgings, the systems, the services.
Exactly. The things you actually need to build a power plant as opposed to, the permits to operate one.
So let's start with the mirage. Because if you just look at the legislation, you'd think the U.S. was bulletproof. I mean, looking at the run-up to 2026, things have been good.
To be fair, the tailwinds entering 2026 have been incredible. We have to give credit where it's due. The Advance Act of 2024 was a genuine game changer.
Refresh our memories on that one, because that was the big bipartisan win, right?
Huge win. It slashed the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's licensing timelines, which was a major bottleneck. It waived fees for advanced reactors.
It was basically hanging a sign on the door of the NRC saying, "We are open for business."
It really was. It shifted the regulator's mission to not just protect the public, but to actually enable the efficient licensing of new tech.
And it wasn't just Congress. We saw President Trump's executive orders in 2025 really double down on this logic.
Right. The target he set, 200 gigawatts of new capacity by 2050, is massive. Just to give you context, that is effectively doubling, maybe even tripling our current capacity.
Wow.
And those orders were specifically designed to shield domestic uranium from foreign dominance. The signal to the market was unmistakable. Build, build, build.
And the market listened. I mean, look at the numbers we're seeing. We have nearly 4 gigawatts of U.S. small modular reactor or SMR projects announced. We have restarts like Palisades.
That's an 800-megawatt facility aiming to be back on the grid this year.
I mean, bringing a dead plant back to life, that feels like we are back.
It feels like a resurrection. But here is the hardware-poor reality check. Despite all that paperwork, despite all those press releases, how many gigafactories for nuclear components have actually put a shovel in the ground in the U.S.?
I'm assuming since you're asking with that tone, the answer is not many.
The answer is zero. Zero gigafactories stated. We have lots of announcements, lots of concept art, but no new industrial cathedrals being built yet. And here is the stat from the stack that should keep utility CEOs awake at night.
Okay.
The entire ecosystem, we're talking heavy forgings, instrumentation and control systems, maintenance, it relies 80% on imports.
80%.
80%. And a massive chunk of that comes directly from Europe.
So wait, this American Renaissance is basically a European assembly project.
To a large extent, yes. We are assembling European components on American soil. That works fine when everyone is getting along.
Globalization is great when friends are friendly.
Exactly. But that brings us to the European chokehold.
The bazooka.
Bazooka. This is the term circulating in Brussels for the EU's potential retaliatory tariffs. The context here is that if the U.S. pushes too hard on, say, protectionist trade policies and other... Maybe autos, maybe steel, the EU hits back. And they don't hit back randomly. They target metals, machinery, and services.
Okay, let's get specific here. Because I think when people hear machinery, they picture, I don't know, nuts and bolts, maybe some wiring. What are we actually talking about?
We are talking about the absolute heaviest of heavy industry. The most critical vulnerability is heavy forgings.
What qualifies as a heavy forging?
We're talking about these massive steel components, over 10,000 tons of specialized, ultra-high-quality steel. These become the reactor pressure vessels, the steam generators.
The hearts of the nuclear plant.
They are the hearts. They have to withstand extreme pressure and radiation for 60, maybe 80 years. You can't have a flaw in them.
Yeah, we don't make those here, I feel like.
Yeah.
We're America. We make steel.
We make steel, but we don't make those. We lost that capacity decades ago. There is effectively no domestic capacity for these ultra-large components.
So who do you call?
If you want a reactor vessel today, you are calling Rosatom in France, or maybe Japan or South Korea. But France is the dominant player here.
Rosatom. I keep seeing that name in the reports we read. How deep is their reach?
You cannot overstate their dominance. It's not just the big metal pieces. Rosatom fabricates fuel for 1/3 of the entire U.S. nuclear fleet.
1/3.
1/3. They supply the instrumentation and control the I&C systems.
The nervous system of the plant.
Think of it as the central nervous system, yeah.
Yeah.
It tells the operators what is happening inside the core. They handle cybersecurity systems. They service plants that power 36 million American homes.
Wow. So 1/3 of our fleet is running on French fuel and French tech. That seems precarious if we start a trade war.
It is deeply precarious, and it's not just them. You have Orano USA. They handle the back-end dry casks, waste logistics. They have over $1 billion in embedded contracts in the U.S.
These companies are just woven into the fabric of our grid.
They are.
So walk me through the scenario. The EU decides to pull the trigger on this bazooka. They slap tariffs on steel, aluminum, whatever. What actually happens to a U.S. project? Does it just get more expensive?
Well, yes. First step is cost. The World Nuclear Association analysis suggests steel and aluminum tariffs alone would inflate component costs by 10 to 20%. That hurts.
10 to 20% is not nothing.
No. But the cost isn't even the worst part.
It's the timing.
It's the schedule. If you suddenly have to shift suppliers, or if you get hit with new quality assurance checks, QA checks, because of a trade dispute, you are looking at adding 12 to 18 months to your timeline.
And in the construction world, a year and a half is an eternity.
It's fatal. You have to understand, you can't just switch suppliers for nuclear components. You don't just go down to the hardware store because the first one was closed.
Right.
To certify a new supplier for a nuclear pressure boundary. That takes months, sometimes years, of audits and NRC oversight.
This just seems like a massive oversight. We passed the Advance Act to clear away the regulatory hurdles, the government paperwork, but we didn't account for the fact that we don't have the factories to build the stuff once it's approved.
Precisely. We greased the skids for the license, but we forgot to build the engine. And this hits the hardest in the sector everyone is most excited about. SMRs.
Small modular reactors.
Mm-hmm.
These are supposed to be the darlings of the Renaissance. Modular, scalable, perfect for these massive AI data centers. The pitch is always, we'll build them in a factory.
That's the promise. The idea is you build them in a factory like Boeing builds planes or Ford builds cars, and you ship them to the site. But think about that factory model.
Okay.
To make it work, you need a steady, uninterrupted stream of high-precision machine tools, valves, and pumps.
Which I assume, given the theme of this deep dive, we also import.
We import the tools needed to build the factories. It's a classic chicken and egg problem.
So you can't build the factories.
If there are retaliatory tariffs on the European machine tools required to set up the SMR assembly lines, well, the domestic build-out stalls before it even starts. You're stuck at step 0.
We can't even build the factories to build the reactors.
You're blocked. And the Europeans aren't sitting still. The European SMR Alliance released their 2025 plan, and it explicitly prioritizes sovereign supply chains.
Sovereign meaning European.
Meaning not American. If the US and EU are fighting over trade, European buyers are going to pivot. They'll look at the Korean AP300. They might even look at Chinese tech.
Which leaves the US developers where?
Isolated and unable to amortize their costs. The whole point of SMRs is volume. The unit economics only work if you make hundreds of them.
And if you can't sell them globally.
Your unit costs skyrockets. You end up with a very expensive boutique product that nobody wants to buy.
It really does feel like a house of cards. And we haven't even talked about the money side of this yet. You mentioned slow strangulation. I assume that's financial strangulation.
It is. We have to look at the why. Why does a 15% tariff or a one-year delay matter so much? It comes down to CapEx, capital expenditure.
Right, the upfront cost.
Yeah. Nuclear power is incredibly front-loaded. It's unique. About 70% of the lifetime cost of a plant is spent before you generate a single electron. It's all upfront cash.
So you're borrowing billions of dollars before you make a dime.
Exactly. You are deep in the hole before you start climbing out. Now, throw in a trade war. Maybe tariffs add 10–15% to your input costs. That hurts. But the real killer...
A schedule slip.
A schedule slip. In the high interest rate world we're living in, and remember, rates aren't zero anymore, every year of delay effectively doubles your financing risk.
Doubles, just from a delay.
It spirals out of control so quickly. If you are borrowing money at 5, 6, 7% and your revenue stream gets pushed back by 18 months because you can't get a forging from France, the math just starts working.
The compound interest eats you alive.
The bank starts looking at you very nervously.
The market's already sensing this, right? I saw in notes that SMR stocks took a hit recently.
They dipped 15% just on rumors of tariffs. That tells you how fragile the confidence is. Investors know that these companies are cash poor and hardware dependent.
So put yourself in the shoes of a utility CEO.
Yeah.
We're sitting there. You need power. You need it soon. You're looking at a nuclear project that might get hit with a 20% cost hike and indefinite delays. What do?
You look at your spreadsheet, you sigh, and you switch your integrated resource plan, your IRP. You build a gas peaker plant.
Or solar plus batteries.
Or solar plus batteries, because it's predictable. It's lower capital risk. So the renaissance ends not with a bang, but with a spreadsheet decision to build a gas plant instead.
That is the tragedy of it. Utilities are risk averse. They cannot bet the farm or the ratepayers' money on a supply chain that is caught in geopolitical crossfire.
And that leads us to the biggest risk of all.
Speaking of geopolitics, let's zoom out. If the U.S. and EU fracture, if we start hitting each other with tariffs, who wins? Because nature abhors a vacuum.
It's the geopolitical free lunch. And the diner enjoying that lunch is China.
China.
Look at the global board.
Yeah.
If the U.S. and EU are busy fighting each other, creating instability, China is sitting there with a completely different offer. They offer turnkey packages.
Turnkey meaning they do everything.
Everything. They make their own heavy forgings. They make their own fuel. They have their own tech. They do not have these supply chain gaps.
They don't have to call France for a pressure vessel?
They make it in Shanghai. So if I'm a country like, say, Indonesia or Turkey, and I want nuclear power.
You want stability. You don't want the drama of a U.S.-EU trade war impacting your grid.
Exactly. You look at the American bid, which is expensive, politically complicated, and reliant on parts that might be tariffed. Then you look at the Asian bids, China or even Korea, they look a lot safer. They look like they can actually deliver.
That is painfully ironic because the whole point of the Advance Act and all this rhetoric was to make us a global exporter again, to set the standards.
That's the goal. The Advance Act was supposed to help us establish a beachhead in Europe and beyond. A trade war ensures we lose that beachhead.
And if we lose the market share?
We lose the ability to set global standards on safety and non-proliferation. If you aren't building the plants, you aren't writing the rules.
And not at the table.
Exactly. And let's not forget Russia. I know Rosatom has been fading a bit under sanctions.
Oh, are they still a player?
They are fading, yes. But a lack of Western cohesion gives them staying power. They can hang on in holdout markets simply because the West can't present a unified, reliable alternative.
But the long-term winner is China.
The long-term winner here is China. By 2030, if we aren't careful, we hand the future of nuclear power to them.
Okay, let's try to pull this all together. We've painted a pretty grim picture here. We have a policy-rich environment, but a hardware-poor reality. We have this potential trade bazooka from the EU that could cut off critical components.
And we have a financial environment where delays are absolutely deadly. That sums it up. The bazooka doesn't nuke the Renaissance. It poisons the soil.
It makes the costs creep up just enough.
And the timeline stretched just enough that the confidence just evaporates.
Is there a way out? I mean, surely someone in Washington or Brussels sees this coming.
There is a narrow path. The only real hope is strategic exemptions. Carve-outs. Basically, both sides have to agree that nuclear components, fuel, forgings, SMR tech are exempt from the trade war.
We've done it before, right, with LNG.
We did it with LNG, liquefied natural gas. We decided energy security was too important to mess with.
But that requires political will.
And in the current climate, that is a big ask. It requires acknowledging that we are dependent on Europe, which is not a popular talking point in Washington right now.
It brings up a really tough question to end on. We talk so much about energy independence. We want everything to be American-made. But listening to you today, it sounds like nuclear power is inherently global.
That is the central tension.
So here's the thought I want to leave everyone with. If the U.S. is serious about energy independence, is it actually possible to have a purely national nuclear sector in a globalized world? Or is energy sovereignty just a myth that is going to distract us while we hand the keys to the future over to China?
It's the multi-billion-dollar question. If we try to go it alone, we might find ourselves going nowhere.
A sobering thought for January 2026. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next one.
Take care.